Hi, my name is Helen Street and I'm very excited to introduce you to our 12 Days of Positive Schools webinar series, which will consist of 12 presentations, including this one, which you can access at your leisure until the end of June. In this first presentation, I want to talk about how this sort of crazy upside down context that we've all found ourselves in this year can actually be a positive means of helping us to move forward to a new normal well. What can we learn, what can we build on that allows us to better support young people and educators and the wider education community to do well academically, socially and emotionally. But before I sort of begin talking about context, I just want to say a few words about the webinar series as a whole. So Positive Schools conferences are generally run in May and June of every year around Australia, and then later in the year we like to run events in Southeast Asia. This year would have been the 12th year that we ran Positive Schools Australia, and but obviously with recent events we are unable to run the events in May and June as planned. I'm really excited that we've been able to reschedule the events to October and November. Registrations are open. And I'm really pleased and grateful to the fact that all of our presenters have been so supportive and united in jumping with us to that later date. And if the world is still sort of upside down in October or November, we will jump again and our presenters will come with us. And thank you also to all of you delegates, all of you who have enrolled in the event and are sticking with us. We so appreciate it, more than words can say. So, to honour the original dates that we had planned for the Positive Schools conference series, those 12 days, 3 days over 4 weeks in 4 states, we wanted to do something that was meaningful and supportive for the education community, and that's where the 12 Days of Positive Schools idea came from. I'm going to be introducing you to some of our most popular and well-loved presenters as we move through these 12 days, including the incredible Dr. Michael Carr-Gregg, Maggie Dent, our partners from Geelong, Justin and David, our partners from Berry Street, Tom and Leonie, and many others. So today, let's begin. So contextual wellbeing is the wellbeing that we experience when we feel meaningfully connected to a healthy context. So what does that mean? It means when we feel that we are connected to the people around us, to the sense of place we find ourselves in, to the policies, the rules that operate and guide our behaviour, and to our sense of what is normal, the norms, the normative behaviour that we carry out every day. When we feel connected in a healthy way to our context and to a healthy context, then our key social needs are met. And those key needs are a need for belonging, for having a sense of positive relationships where we feel that we are accepted for who we are, where we feel the relationships have some depth to them, they're authentic, where we feel comfortable in our own skin when we're participating in those relationships, be it online or off, be it part of a group or with just a single other person. It's also about our need for autonomy and having a voice, our sense of agency in the world. We need to feel like we're an active participant in our world. When we don't have that need met, we struggle. And I think that maybe more than many other issues that we faced in the last few months is the sense that the world is spinning out of our control, and in some large degree we've lost that sense of agency and our autonomy in the world. So it's no wonder that we've experienced so much anxiety. We also have a great need to feel that we are growing in and learning and gaining in competency as we travel through life. This could be about learning about ourselves and our own personal development. It could be about learning and deepening our relationships or learning about our sense of place. It could be about learning topics academically, such as students in a class at school. Whatever we're doing, we engage more fully in activities, in life in general, when we feel a sense of our competency. And that belief in our competency is only to a small degree dependent on how we are actually doing, what our outcomes are telling us, or what other people are telling us. It's a lot to do with our own self-beliefs about our ability to do well in the future. So it's a lot, very much connected with our sense of hope. Operating in large groups, in school communities, in classrooms, in wider communities, we also have a need for equity. When we believe that life is fair, that there's a sense of justice, that our differences and our uniqueness is recognised and respected, then we feel, well, our needs are more easily met. We tend to feel more that we have that voice, that we have that opportunity for fair and authentic relationships, and that we can grow to become our personal best no matter what is happening in the world around us. So in recent months, just about everybody, certainly in Australia, but in many countries around the world, changed their mode of learning to home learning with, I think, quite mixed results. For some students, learning from home has been incredibly challenging with difficult home situations, problems with technology or not having any technology, problems finding the right space, maybe stress going on at home with families losing jobs, etc. For others, though, it has been a really positive experience, and I think has demonstrated to some students who maybe were struggling with the social complexity of school that they can thrive if given a different contextual situation. So as much as I don't think anybody wanted or planned this time, I think that it's certainly true that it has given every one of us some positives, as well as possibly a lot of stress and anxiety along the way. And it's really important that we do sort of like touch base and connect and reflect on what these positives are, so that in our haste to get everything back to normal, we can actually create something that is more meaningful, more equitable, and meets the needs of more people within our communities. So I want to just read you a quote, and this is something that a Year 7 HAS teacher, Health and Humanities teacher, and pastoral advisor has said recently, and this is Anna Partridge. And she commented recently that while teaching my classes online, some students who struggled in class have thrived. They've submitted their work more actually on time to a good quality, whereas others have really missed the collaboration in class and bouncing ideas off each other. She also says that some of her students loved the unstructured day of being at home and being more around their families, and yet there were others who really struggled with their home environment and felt that relationships were really strained. I like her quote because I think it sums up quite well some of the extreme differences that we've observed with students learning from home, and those differences are also very evident in terms of teachers' experiences as well. So I think that tells us a few different things that immediately are important in our sense of how we move forward well. Firstly, it tells us that we have to be really careful not to make sweeping statements about how this whole crazy 2020 unplanned experiment has impacted on all of us. So it's important that we don't immediately assume that home learning is going great for everyone, because although it might be going well for lots of people, it hasn't gone well for everyone. It's really important that we don't make a sweeping statement about how everybody can't wait to be back at school. It might be true for many kids, might be true for many teachers, but it's not true for everyone. Rather, it's really important that we acknowledge that as much as we all have those key needs as social beings, we are all unique individuals, and we actually all need very different contexts in order to thrive. So these different experiences that we're reporting and we're having during this unprecedented time also tell us very clearly, remind us very clearly, that context matters hugely, and different people need different contexts in order to thrive. So absolutely, we all have those same key needs. We need to build positive relationships and have that sense of belonging. We need to have a voice. We need to feel that we're active in our own lives. We need a sense of competency. We need to feel that we have hope about positive outcomes and reaching our personal best and growing and doing well. But we need different environments to have those needs met and to be able to reach our ultimate goals of trying to achieve our personal best. Let me give you an example from real world school, which I think really illustrates the fact that different contexts can really differ in their ability to support different people's needs. So an easy example is a swim carnival. So imagine the swim carnival at your school, and you'll have some students who absolutely thrive in this environment. They feel that they're part of a team, they're part of a group, maybe part of a house or a faction that they're competing for. And that really enhances their sense of belonging. They may be choosing what races they want to do and how they want to sort of set up for orders of kids in the relay race, or how they want to cheer on their team, and they feel there's a huge sense of agency because they want to be doing what they're doing. They feel that they have a voice in that activity. There's a sense of autonomy. And there's also, with these kids, there's often a sense that you never know, they might win, or they might do really well, or certainly improve on their personal best. So there's a sort of a sense of hopefulness about the outcomes of the different events, no matter what really does happen. So they have a sense that they are growing and learning in their competency as well. So for these kids, those key needs are being met within the context of the swim carnival, which is a very easily defined context. And because their needs are being met, they're more engaged in the activities, they're more likely to actually perform better in the races than they might if they were not competing. They're more likely to have a positive attitude and be seen to be team players, people who are willing to give it a go, do their best, have a sense of sort of being sporting and fair play. They're more likely to exhibit positive behaviours, and they're more likely to exhibit well-being because they're more likely to actually be experiencing well-being. And it's students like this that really sort of bring home the positives of events like swimming carnivals, and I think lead people who sort of share that mindset or that experience of the context to believe that, oh, well, this is a great event and this is something we should be doing for everyone. But let's not forget those other students. There are other students whose needs are not being met within this particular context, not through any fault of their own, but rather because they're unique, because they're different, because they have different histories, because they interact with the world in a different way. For some students, it's a time of anxiety. They feel that they are actually an outsider. They don't feel comfortable in the swim carnival, in this particular event, and so they don't actually feel a sense of belonging, but rather they feel on the edge of their groups, or maybe they feel the relationships are strained because they don't want to be there. They don't feel a sense of agency or autonomy, often because there's a lot of pressure put upon them to have a go, to try and participate in activities that they feel they have no choice or control over. So they don't feel they have a voice. And no matter what their natural abilities, no matter what other people say, no matter if their teacher says, hey, just do your best, they don't feel like they're going to do very well. So they don't have that sense of competency. And often because their needs are not really being met, they are struggling to engage, they're struggling to perform well, they're struggling to behave well. And so the reality is they're unlikely to actually do very well. Their capacity is limited and their well-being is limited. So these kids are often come across as very disengaged. They might have behavioural issues, they might be withdrawn, they might be teary because they're feeling really stressed and anxious, and they almost undoubtedly will be struggling with their well-being. So this sort of example, which is a simple one because it's a very defined context, but we can sort of like relate to really any situation in any environment, really tells us very clearly that when our needs are met within a set context, we can really thrive. But when they're not, we really struggle. So what does that tell us about what we need to consider about the school context when we are moving forward with more face-to-face teaching and into the rest of 2020 and beyond? it tells us a few key things. It tells us firstly that when we see a child who is struggling, rather than thinking, well gosh, they really should shift their attitude, change their behaviour, try harder, be more motivated, maybe instead we need to think and consider, what are their unmet needs? What needs are not being met in this child within this particular context? And what can we do to support those needs, to better support the meeting of those needs in that child? In some instances, it may be that that young person is simply not having the skills, the necessary skills that they need to connect with a very positive context. They might need better relationship skills, better social skills, help with emotional regulation. But in many instances, it may also be that that context is simply not the best context for them. And then we need to think, well, how can we make contextual changes? For some kids might thrive in a more public arena, presenting in front of the class, working in large groups, being in a large environment with lots of different friends and a sort of big breadth of their social circle. Whereas other children do much better when they're out of the public eye. They do much better working on their own or in pairs, and that's okay. And they do better with one or two close friends, and they're people who have more depth in their relationships rather than sort of being social butterflies. And that's a difference. That doesn't make them a lesser person, that just makes them a different person. And it does, though, mean that it's more likely that they will struggle in many of the traditional contexts that we find ourselves in large schools, when traditionally we're always surrounded by social complexity and lots of different children. So it tells us that in addition to helping kids to connect to their context, we need to consider what we can do about the context, especially if we're in a large school with kids who are shyer or a bit more introverted. We need to have opportunity to vary the context, to be flexible with our contextual considerations. So this might mean that there are opportunities to do things in a more public forum and opportunities to do things more privately. Opportunities to work in groups, but also opportunities to work in pairs or to work alone. We also have to consider how we can expand context so that there are broader boundaries, so that our policies, our practices, our norms incorporate differences and the uniqueness of all individuals within those contexts. I think it's interesting to see how some of the quieter, shyer young people have thrived in a home environment. But also some of the more social kids have also thrived at home without having to deal with so much complexity of a school social situation. It's important that we ask young people, when we're helping them to re-establish themselves in our schools and move forward during what is still a very stressful and uncertain time, ask them, what was different for you when you were learning from home? Of course, there's the obvious, like, I was sitting on my bed on my laptop, maybe rather than at a desk. But beyond that, what felt different about your relationships? What was different about the changes that had to be made in terms of policy and practice? In Australia, we had no NAPLAN. Yay! I must say, I think that's a pretty positive thing. What does that mean in terms of young people's experiences? What does that mean moving forward? What was different in terms of the norms? Everyone talked about getting used to a new normal or a return to normal, but what makes something feel normal and what changed during that time? Once you've explored what felt different at a sort of deeper level than the obvious physical change from being in a school environment to being a home one, from being surrounded by people to having less people around you, ask your colleagues, ask your students, what did you find that you loved, that benefited you? What did you enjoy that was different? And then ask them, what did you miss? What did you miss from the way the world was before? And then finally, what would you like to do differently when we're all back in school moving forward. And just by asking those key questions of our colleagues, of each other, of ourselves, and certainly of our students, we're raising an awareness that we have been through a lot of change. We're unpacking the impact of that change, and in doing so, helping everyone to reconnect with being in school moving forward. But most importantly, we're gathering vital information from this crazy but nonetheless massive social experiment that we've all been involved in. And we can use that information usefully to ensure that we create variability in our context, that we have breadth in our context, that we have a context that acknowledges and recognizes and embraces the uniqueness in all individuals. Tomorrow, I will be introducing day 2 of the 12 Days of Positive Schools conference series, and introducing you to the very amazing Dr. Jared Cooney-Horvath, who is going to unpack some of the neuroscience behind stress and help us understand the relationship between stress and memory. But for now, if you'd like to find out more about contextual wellbeing and you'd like to join me to look more in depth about what contextual wellbeing is within our schools and how we experience it and how we can help young people to feel more connected to school, a greater sense of belonging and more engagement in their learning, then I'd love you to join me for my webinar series that I'll be running from the end of June, and there'll be a slide coming up to tell you about that, or you can visit the Positive Schools website to find out more. I also very much hope that you'll join me at the end of the year when I, fingers crossed, will be able to once again meet face to face in busy rooms full of like-minded people. There's something so precious about being surrounded by other people and sharing thoughts and sharing ideas and hearing what people have to say in a live forum. So I hope to see as many of you as possible at the Positive Schools conferences when we come back again. But till then, please do enjoy the whole of these 12 days of Positive Schools online, and thank you very much for your time.